man, SummerWalker. She had one of the best R&B debut albums like ever. I know her joint actually debuted #1 on the charts. Still Over It. Shout out to Still Over It. Me and T Shaw have listened to the album, and it's great. But now we got to get into some fairly crazy stuff because she was talking about basically this idea of London on the Track, right? And when she was talking about London on the Track, she basically this is my favorite song on the album thus far. It's called Fourth Baby Mama. Okay. Now here at Brewin Black, we don't even like to use the word baby mama, or but that's the literal name of the song. And she started off the song by saying, "Your mama should have whooped your ass." And first of all, don't ever tell me and don't ever start anything with me by saying my mama should whoop my ass. That's disrespectful. But it was, but in the song, she talks about how his mom was not there for him, and how now because he's lit, he has money, he's paying up for a lot of stuff for his mom. His mom condones certain behavior in terms of the way in which he treats women, and it started to make me think about like, as two brothers who have great moms, right? We think about this idea of raising a Black man in America and having to instill so much confidence in him and so much love in him because the world naturally wants to hate us and looks for ways to hate us. And of course, it does the same thing for little Black girls as well. But I speak about Black men because sometimes in all that love that we are given by like our moms and things of that nature, sometimes we can be defended and coddled in a way that doesn't make us the best mates for future people because some of our behavior is justified and we make some excuses for that behavior. Right. And so I just, right. And I think that mothers try to love us so much. And I think that sometimes people will also say things like, who raised you? Sort of making a claim that our guardians didn't raise us in the correct manner. But T, what do you think about how the world sometimes loves us so much that, there's not a sense of accountability for like our future relationships? Speak on that a little bit for me.
Yeah, bro. And that's such a good question because, I mean, especially couched in this episode, right? Where we understand as Black men, there's a lot of harm that can come to our bodies and our physical just for being who we are. Like, not even as an individual, literally just our identity as a person that is being born can bring violence.
Right.
That's what I also, quick tidbit, that's what I want people to understand about like the trans identity. And when we're talking about women, right? Like literally who you are can cause violence. Nothing you've said, nothing you've done, just literally you existing in this world and walking down the street can lead to that, right? So I think with that, then you're like, okay, well, we need to meet these people with care, but in a lot of different ways, especially because the issues that affect the Black community, Black men, like our issues are and our the injustices that happen to us are centered, right? So we have a privilege in a way to hold these conversations, and in a lot of ways like we get put on pedestals. I know a lot of Black men that really are just they meet the bar because the bar sometimes is in hell, and they get put on a pedestal just for like doing things that like women do all the time, right? So I think that is one thing that maybe we can start to think about how to hold people accountable. It's like you sometimes I think as men, especially Black men, we what's the saying? Like you applaud a fish for swimming. Like I feel like sometimes that happens to us. Like just because we're a decent ally, people are like, oh my God. It's like, that white boy that's a Kappa. I forgot his name, but he was shimmying. Everybody was like, oh my God. And then like anytime he said anything about racial injustice, people are like, oh my, like he's the white Martin Luther King.
Right.
That same thing is like, we can't continue to put each other and allow people to put us on pedestals for doing things that we know we should do. And I think that that's one thing, because I think that we start to think that we're much more special than we really are. And that's not saying that we aren't special, because we all are. But like, again, we all are special, right? We're no more special than anyone else. So the things that we do shouldn't be held to a higher standard as if a Black woman had done it, or if somebody else had done it, right? Like, I think that that is one thing that I think that we maybe have to get out of. But I mean, I think my mother, like, I would have to ask my sister, but I don't think she raised us any different, right? And I think that that's another thing. I think that sometimes we are raised a little different, and we have different rules, and there are double standards to things. Me and my sister had the same curfew. So like, I know some people are like, oh, the son can stay out a little longer, but the girl got to come in earlier as a protection for her, and that's understandable. But it does impose a double standard. So I think things like that, because even in my family, there are some deadbeat dads, right? That people, they give them the benefit of the doubt, like, oh, he was going through some things, or he wasn't ready at the time. But it's like, sir, your child's still living and breathing and growing older, and you haven't done anything, so that's not really an excuse. So I think that oftentimes people find excuses for us and our actions, and I think that that's the start of the problem. That being on the pedestal and always being able to excuse things that lead you to being a bad person. Not saying that one action makes you a bad person, but when you continue to excuse actions, those things, the parts become a whole, right? Like, and I think it starts to make up some people's identity, and they think they can get away with things they definitely shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because, in that, I also want to bring up something that's been really big this week. Heavy week, man. Which is DaBaby and DaniLeigh. Because as you talk about this idea of accepted behavior and like that becoming a trend and a pattern that folks accept, I think about DaniLeigh and DaBaby. And so for those of you who don't know, DaniLeigh was basically in the baby's townhouse in Charlotte, North Carolina. She is, not nursing her baby, but taking care of her baby. And her and the baby have an argument. The baby says, "Hey, look, you can't stay here. You got to go now. Maybe you can go to a 5-star hotel, whatever." DaniLeigh is not from North Carolina. I believe she's from LA. She didn't have anywhere to really go, no resources in terms of having people that she's connected to in North Carolina or in Charlotte at least. And so she's like, no, that's not happening. And so DaBaby puts her on Instagram live. And see, you and I were talking about how like maybe it was a farce at first, but I was going back and thinking, I was like, she didn't look like she was ready to be on camera. She didn't look done up. She looked, and she was putting the pillow up, right? Mm-hmm. She was putting the pillow up and multiple times in the video. And then you see another IG live video of the cops actually being there because DaBaby actually calls the cops and the authorities and somehow presses charges against DaniLeigh. And it was just a very humiliating moment for her. And she was talking about how much she loves. You said what?
I think that was the point for him.
Right. And then he uses it to promote his tour, right? As he's talking about it, right? So like it's one of those things where, I look back at some other IG live videos of them, and he explicitly calls her his side piece, his side witch, you know what I'm saying? And it was just a very, very unfortunate thing because I think that she actually had some posts about like being his yellow bone and like all he wants is a yellow bone. And
that's when we had about colorism.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where right, and it's like this man has had trends and patterns of just having multiple mothers of multiple children, and for some reason people get caught up in this trap of, oh, I'm going to be the one that changes this person. And mind you, she was also going back and forth with another mother of his child, Mimi, back and forth, right? And so I think it's interesting because the real conversation here, T, was main chick versus side chick. And I think that from a personal standpoint, I've had people in my life that I looked at and said, hey, look, you are special to me. Like I would get rid of all these other women before I got rid of you. But I think sometimes where men mess up is that, and women in terms of how they look at it, is that just because you're not necessarily, just because you're more important than a side piece, if you're not the only piece in a lot of case scenarios, it's still not valuable, right?
Mhm.
Because I think what DaniLeigh was thinking was, oh, he's spending time with me. We've been in this house for 3 months and this, that, and the third. But if the man thinks about you, doesn't consider you the most important person in his life, and in monogamous relationships, the only person in his life, you're wasting your time, because
Mhm.
you can be more important than all the casual people. But just because you're a level above casual doesn't mean that that's something that you should hold on to. That's a very
Mhm.
low bar for people who want a monogamous relationship. If I'm not your only piece and you're looking for a monogamous relationship, why would you entertain someone who's making you just slightly above their side pieces? And that's sort of what I've been thinking about. But I want you to tell me your thoughts on DaBaby and DaniLeigh, and like this idea of a side piece versus a main piece, and what that really means.
Okay, yeah. I like we said, I originally thought this was a hoax, not a hoax, a publicity stunt more
Right,
than
right.
anything, because it just was everywhere and it didn't seem that big of a deal. But like the Shade Room had 6 posts about it. It
Yeah.
was trending on Twitter. The baby's other baby mama jumped in, was saying stuff, and I was like, "What? I just didn't get it. Like it felt manufactured as a news topic. And it's like anytime something's a news topic, people eat it up and they're gonna talk about it. So I wanted to know why it was really a thing. But I think there's enough that I've seen that could show that it was a real life thing, especially because there is like charges and things like that. Um, but I think this week tells me that, I mean, this week, every week, I think that there has to be more respect for the mother of your children. I
Mm.
think that it was wild. Even if we're talking about side piece versus main piece, like it's wild to be nutting in somebody that's your side piece. I think that's wild. To have a child with somebody you consider your side piece, that's wild, right? Like that, when we talk about like when people talk about like, oh, the LGBT is gonna bring down the black community and it's the destruction, black feminists and black LGBT people are the destroying the black family. Like, no, nutting in side pieces is destroying the black family. Having
Oh, yo,
children,
run that back. No, run that back. Say that again. Say that again.
nutting inside women, or even nutting in anybody you don't see building a relationship or building a real foundation with, is actually destroying the black family. We are the one that women are the one that house and birth the children, yes, but we are the ones that we have literally a half in procreating a child, y'all. Like, so we need to take responsibility. So that's another thing that we have to be held accountable with and for. So it's like it it boggles my mind that like we can't see past some of these things. And yes, that's really what is destroying the black community. I'm sorry, PSA. Anybody that needs to hear that, I need y'all to hear that today. But yeah, like it just, the lack of respect, the utter lack of respect. And it's like y'all can be beefing, but to know that y'all were that good just 30 seconds ago and like you walked in and you switched up, I think that that's concerning. And I think that that can be concerning to anybody. But to treat someone like that you have a child with, is wild. And I think that the true victim here is the child. And this is, and we can take this away from a celebrity thing, because this happens in every single everyday life with a lot of people, right? There are people that people have kids with, they end up hating. And it's like you got to learn how to co-parent at some point, because I promise you the child is gonna feel that tension the most. And I think that especially at that age, they don't know how to handle that. So I think that like that's the conversation I would rather have, because like the main versus side, like honestly, like you shouldn't have, nobody should be a main if you have a side, you know, like, because
That's
that's it, unless it, like, if you into polygamy, boom, do it. Polyamory, boom. But that should be a discussed thing. If you are into open relationships, boom. But don't be exclusive and then have somebody on the side. That's not exclusive. And I think that people are too selfish. Like, I think that if you want to explore having multiple partners, talk to your partner about that and be open and transparent. Be a man about that, or be a woman about however you want to move. But other than that, I'm cool.
Yeah, no, I feel you, and I bring that up because I think that a lot of times, when we think about I think people are selfish, like you say, right? Like, we want to have that person in our lives that we don't want to let go of, but like we don't care about them enough to like make everybody else disappear, right? And
Mhm.
then a lot of times I think that folks sell people these false promises of, oh, I'm going to treat you like a man. I'm going to
Mhm.
do more for you than I'm doing for other people, but I'm still not going to, but it still doesn't mean I'm going to settle down or whatever. And like I said, we're only talking about people who want monogamous relationships. And it's like you sell that person a dream. I've sold people dreams. I give people boyfriend benefits without necessarily having a boyfriend mentality. Like, some of this
Mhm.
stuff is just fun for me. So, but even me, I've had to take steps back. And so I think that, and I love that point that you made about, what really destroys the black family, outside of white supremacy. Sometimes we have to look at some of the stuff
Papa
that
was
we're
Rolling
doing.
Stone.
Right, right, right. And I think sometimes we have to look at what's happening with us internally, because, to your point, one of the reasons that DaniLeigh thinks that DaBaby got mad at her is because she had a Plan B sent to his condo,
Mm,
meaning that doesn't even mean that she was still okay with raw sex, but she wasn't okay with getting pregnant again, or at least at this time. And for DaBaby to, if he, let's say he had that reaction because of that, if that was the case, that looks crazy. And furthermore, you're willing to put your daughter out on the street. Because
mm,
let's say DaniLeigh was attacking DaBaby or something like that. If she's getting charged with those types of things, I'd be damned if the mother of my children would ever attack me and think she's going anywhere with my child. You
big
know what I
fact.
mean?
Big
Especially
fact.
when I'm in my city, where I have the resources and all the connections and stuff like that. If you really feel feared for your life, or you really were that scared of DaniLeigh, your daughter wouldn't be going with DaniLeigh. You use the cops as a tactic to help kick her out, right? Because if
Mhm.
she was attacking you, there's no way in the world that a responsible father would let his 3-month-old T go
Mhm.
with that mother. So I think that, it's embarrassing. She said that she's gonna learn from it and grow. But I think, as DaBaby looks at this situation, I hope that he really takes the time to actually really like and enjoy the person that he wants to spend, the next person he wants to get pregnant, because this is not how we should be running, y'all. Like y'all are destroying lives. You have no intention of being with this person or loving this person. And I think that DaniLeigh was sold something else. And
Absolutely.
if he did, and even if he told her, hey, you're a side piece, because he did that on Instagram Live, you cannot then treat her like she's your main and give her the benefits of a main. That's manipulative. I can
Big
say that because I've done it, even if it's been unintentional. We all have to look ourselves in the mirror. So that's,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a crazy world, bro. It's a crazy world. Yeah,
Absolutely.
man. Yeah, but